was listening to more YouTube videos. That's what I do for most of my day. I work and have my earbuds plugged in, and I'm always listening to some stuff to further educate myself. I'm definitely feeling some of the pressured speech lately, so I figure, I can put it to use on my own blog and reflect my thoughts. It's kind of like having my own personal diary, but it's a little bit funner to do it in recordings, and you can look back. But it's like, that's what, when I'm feeling the pressured speech, so I don't take it out on my family. Sometimes I can talk somebody's ear off, and I don't mean to be like bothering them, but I'm like, when I'm listening to all these clinicians, and it's like, it's so bland and boring, and it's all about, you gotta take all these meds, and they'll be like, yeah, some people get off their meds and they'll go 2 years and they'll be fine, and then they'll have another episode. Oh my god. Like, some of these therapists and doctors, they need to go take the pills that they're prescribing, and then they would realize why people don't want to be put on a bunch of meds, like where you're zombified. And like I said, that tardive-kinesia, that is the biggest load of bullshit that I've ever heard of. If something is making you feel that way, the biggest thing is just having coping skills, like when you really focus on your behavior and what you're doing and what you need to do to stay out of trouble, like, but it's all, it's so ridiculous how everything is based on a pill and it's not based on other things. Like, they say 1 manic episode and you're bipolar for life. Like, it's like, okay, back in the day, we called it like a nervous breakdown, and I might be, bipolar for my life, but I refuse to take that diagnosis of like, this is a serious medical condition where 25% of people try to commit suicide, and it's like 20% of people do commit suicide. It's like, yeah, when this is the narrative that's being constantly pushed out, and, you'll go to Google it, and it's like, serious mental disorder. Like, people feel like their lives are coming to an end. When I was diagnosed, and I went through, when I was 25, my brother being diagnosed schizoaffective, and he ended up committing suicide. And part of the reason that I opened up my blog is because there's this horribly depressing outlook on it. And one thing that's, I feel, is damaging is, we all feel the need to connect and to be understood by others. But I've seen some people that, are bipolar, and it's like, they're like putting the camera in their face and then crying their eyes out, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know, it's a little bit odd to me, because I know, like, if I'm crying my eyes out, I don't want a camera in my face. I'm not taking selfies of my, that's when this shit gets a little bit weird, and I'm like, okay, well, what are you trying at least to do to snap out of the depression? Like, because I've had it. After I was diagnosed, it was hard for me to get out of bed. I didn't leave my room for a while. Like, I was so terrified that I was going to go through what my brother went through. And before, when I had my manic episodes, I was in the hospital 3 separate times because I had gotten really manic. And not that I was hurting other people or harm to myself, it was just my behavior. My family got really nervous because they were seeing my brother's behavior in me. Those hospitals, like I said, MUSC was great. and they really helped me, and it's taught me to have the coping skills and the mental awareness, and to always be observing my own behavior and what I'm doing. Like, if you're not hurting anybody, like, why? Like I said before, people commit suicide at a higher rate being put on these meds than if they had not. My brother was put on Depakote, and it made him feel like total shit. My brother was like this really active person, and this is the thing, is when he was his healthiest, he was a personal trainer, and he made himself run every day. He made himself do things every day, like, because depression, just like mania, it feeds into itself. And then before you know it, it's like you're eating all the junk in the pantry. And I have definitely had myself quite a few pity parties, so I'm not judging anybody that does. But when we're putting it out there to others to be helpful and supportive, you know, it's not helping by, you know, this is your illness, this is what you have, it's part of your illness to be depressed. And, you know, like, I had to have a talk with myself, like, okay, Debbie Downer, like, you know, and you can't just snap out of depression. So I'm not saying that or trying to dismiss people, but you do have to have the self-talk of, like, it's another day. I need to at least go out and try to do something, because watching all these other bloggers that are crying and having their own pity parties, and then I'm having my own pity party, I did it. So, like I said, I'm not judging, but when I was watching all these videos, what came to my mind is, how boring would the world be without bipolar people? You know? What would we have done without Robin Williams? And that was so tragic. You know, what would we do without Teddy Roosevelt? He was the one responsible for all of our national parks during the Great Depression, bringing that into fruition. And they said he was bipolar. What would we do without geniuses like Abraham Lincoln? And it's like, this one therapist, she's reading through the DSM. I think the DSM is a huge load of bullshit that, yeah. Go study how they come up with shit in the DSM. They just, you know, describe a series of behaviors and they slap a new label on it. And like I said, every time you can give somebody another diagnosis, yeah, they make more money at the hospital. Healthcare in America, it is outrageous. I was in the medical field for 10 years, and now I look back and I was like, when I first got into it, I got into it because I really wanted to help others, and, you know, I have this great amount of compassion towards others. And more every year, I was just like, this is a business. This isn't healthcare. This is a fucking business. In America, healthcare is such a business. Like with diabetes, people can cure themselves of diabetes, but they're not putting that out there. Like, well, diabetes type 2, through diet and exercise, like you can. But we're so hooked on diagnosis, and then it's like, I'm taking the bipolar as my identity at this point, in hopes that maybe I can lift somebody else's spirits, because when it happened to me, I'm 33, I was 25 when I was taking care of my brother and taking him out of the hospital. And what was really hard was when I was at the hospital, I saw what he saw. Like, I could see life through his eyes at that point. And people were mad that he took his life, but it was like, whenever I saw it, I had absolutely no judgment, like, and I thought, like, I wish I would have known what I know now so I could have helped him, because it's scary, it's extremely scary. When I was diagnosed, I felt like they had diagnosed me with cancer and they gave me a death sentence, instead of being like, okay, all this crazy stuff is going on in your life. You're having an emotional reaction to it. That's part of being fucking human, And you see all this shit, and it's all about, like, diagnosing people with disorders when they're going through something fucking terrible. And it's like, it's not taking into consideration just our human nature. I love listening to Stephen Fry also. Like, I have learned I don't even want to hear the bullshit that half these counselors are pushing out, because they don't know. And they've never taken the drugs in their life, so they don't know how shitty it makes you feel. Because I would compare the mania, like I've said before, it's like if your brain was a fast car and my brother's brain could go like 500 miles an hour. My brother was a fucking genius, like a genius of a man. And what they did to him in these hospitals, and he only had the experience of going to Marshall Pickens. I was sent to Marshall Pickens, and all they wanted to do was shove pills down your throat, because if you refuse to take your pills, then they'll give you a forcible injection of Halidol. Halidol is fucking horrible. Maybe in worst case scenarios, people need Halidol, but I think Ativan is sufficient to calm people down. But they're like, oh, we don't want people getting high. Heaven forbid. I mean, God created these drugs, and drugs are so terrible. Well, they are terrible when you give your life away to the drugs and you become like a really bad addict. But if you're having an episode, you genuinely need help. When they gave me Halidol, because what they were doing was they were coming across so aggressive to me. Nobody was talking to me in a calm way, trying to calm me down. They grabbed me. There was five officers. They did this at Marshall Pickens. And there was I called her the roly-poly. She was this freaking nurse that just sat around and rolled from spot to spot, didn't do shit, because she didn't want to deal with a patient. She goes and gets the shot of Halidol for me. They rip off my pants, expose my vagina in front of 5 security guards, gave me a shot in the ass, and I woke up 2 days later. And apparently, I had been walking around talking to people. I had no recollection of it. That's how they're treating the mentally ill. Or, I accidentally said $30. I meant 30 days. I went to jail for 30 days for contempt of court over all the family court bullshit that I was going through. And I will have to say that God gave me that experience so I could see through the eyes of others. Because I learned so much about just mental health and everything. And what I thought was the most ridiculous thing ever in the jail. Oh my gosh. So, half of them are there on drug-related charges. What do they make the inmates do? They make them line up, and they have to take medicine. They force them to take medicine. If you don't take medicine, they'll throw you in solitary confinement. Oh, and I spent 8 days in solitary confinement listening to people beat their heads against the wall, scream out for help, beg for a phone call, be refused showers. They'll give them stale chips and like peanut smear on a bread. And when I was in jail for the contempt, what broke my heart is I first walked in and I called him brute force. He's a big black man. He had been in the group homes all of his life. It was apparent that he had learning disabilities. They had him in solitary confinement when I first walked in, and I knew that he was going through an episode, and they were making it so much worse. I mean, they'll strip you down. I will say, between jail and the mental health hospital, you have more freedom in jail than you do in the mental health hospital. You know, they will strip you of everything. You're bored as shit. You don't have anything to do all day long, you know? And then this is supposed to make you better. It's like, no, like, we need to start looking at things through a therapeutic aspect, and it needs to be people besides, like, one of the doctors I had. She was a nice enough girl, but it was apparent she didn't ever go through shit in her life, and to her, it was like we were just a diagnosis in a book, and that summed up the whole like condition of the person. Is they're this diagnosis, and they take this and this pill, and they will have people so drugged up in those places. I mean, people are practically drooling on themselves, and I'm like, okay. They have people just giving them shots of Halidol left and right. Just Halidol, Halidol, Halidol. Halidol's an answer for everything. Like, this is how we treat the mentally ill, and then we wonder why they end up taking their lives, because this is the bleak reality that they saw. When I went, I mean, it was a truly, like, eye-opening experience, and I felt like God gave me the experience of jail and the mental health hospital so I could find my passion in what I wanted to do, because I knew in the medical field, I worked in geriatrics, and I would see them try to charge for every single thing, because what they can do is, say a patient's in a nursing home, they rack up a bill, they pass away, the nursing home can take their whole estate, and they'll go and kick the family members out on the street that were living in the house. They'll go kick them out, take their whole estate, and half the time, the tests that they were running were absolutely ridiculous, because I worked for a laboratory company. That's how they're treating our geriatric patients. I mean, when you experience it and you see it for what it is, you're like, I want to help, but I don't want a fucking thing to do with this. Like, I want to be an advocate for that, you know? Like I was saying, how boring would our world be if we didn't have people with emotions and feelings that, you know? It was a nervous breakdown in the past. Now it's a life-term diagnosis that you have to deal with, and you have to take a fistful of pills. They would give some of those geriatric patients, no joke, 20 meds a day. 20 meds a fucking day. 20 pills. Yeah. Because I asked a nurse what her average was when she was going around, and she was like, a lot of these patients are on 20 meds. I don't know if it was 20 different meds or 20 pills, but at least 20 pills most of them were on. And then they would jack up huge bill. I loved we had this African doctor. He would come in and he would start tapering people off of things, because this is what you, if you're really having bad side effects with your meds, of course always consult your physician, but taper down. Because my brother, he felt terrible on Depakote, and one day he just got so sick of it, he stopped taking it. Then right after that, he went and drove to the Walmart, bought a shotgun. That's how simple it was for him to get his hands on a gun, even though he had gone to the mental health hospital 5 times that year. They sold him a gun right away at Walmart, you know. And I've heard Depakote will give people like double vision. Oh my gosh, I loved him. I called him Moses. He would dress up like characters out of the Bible and using the towels. I mean, you gotta get creative in the Looney Tune bin because you don't have anything. But I loved him. His name was Samuel. He was homeless. He had been an alcoholic ever since he was 5 years old, he said. He's like, yeah, I started drinking when I was 5 because my parents let me, which I'm sure that caused some brain damage. But he was such a beautiful person. And, they're telling him, oh no, you gotta take Depakote. And he's like, Depakote's giving me double vision. Depakote makes me feel horrible. Samuel had all kinds of voices in his head, but they were entertaining voices. Like, he would just laugh and laugh at random moments. And I was always like, I wonder what goes on in his head that is so funny all the time. I would love to be in his head. And these people that I met, I lost any kind of judgment that I can have towards another human being, unless it's like people that are out, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths. Yeah, I was with a sociopath for 5 years. I feel sorry for what led him to become a person that lacks any level of empathy, but I don't have patience for that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of stuff they won't even go to therapists. It's even said if they go to therapists, they just learn how to manipulate better. And a lot of narcissists are getting diagnosed bipolar, not people that are really bipolar. And then it puts a bad rap on all of us because they did some horrible shit. And then that's viewed as this is our disease. And it's like, no, study people that were inspirational, that really accomplished some stuff, and read through their life story. You'll see. You'll be like, they're one of us. They're one of us, and you can make it more of a joke when you get out of the grim bleakness and you try to make yourself snap out of that Debbie Downer party. Just like I said, I have been there. Now, I force my ass to go walk 5 miles a day. I force my ass to go to the gym, whether I feel like it or not. It's like a job. And as soon as I do it, I'm always grateful that I did it. But I'll be like, I want to be lazy. Oh, just get an Uber. I want to be lazy. And that's when you gotta fight that inner demon in you. So, these are just some of my thoughts tonight. My pressured speech coming out. Sorry if the thoughts don't go in an even flow, but it's therapy for me, and the best kind of therapy I can get, because my therapist, she's sweet enough. She doesn't get it. She doesn't get it. So, hopefully I can at least make a few other of us nut jobs laugh. Have a good evening.